The press conference had been scheduled to discuss Ronaldo's upcoming charity match and new foundation initiatives, a routine media appearance that his publicists had organized to maintain his positive image and promote causes that aligned with his brand. But when the first journalist asked about his recent social media silence regarding the escalating situation in Gaza, something shifted in the room's atmosphere. A tension that everyone could feel, but nobody quite knew how to navigate, as they realized this carefully controlled event was about to become something entirely different and infinitely more significant. Ronaldo sat at the small table facing dozens of cameras and reporters from around the world, his usual confident demeanor replaced by something more thoughtful and weighted. And when he heard the question that his management team had specifically instructed him to deflect or avoid, he made a decision that would define not just this press conference, but his legacy as someone who used his platform for more than just promoting sportswear and luxury watches. Someone who understood that global influence came with responsibilities that extended far beyond the football pitch and into the realm of human conscience. "I have been silent," he said slowly, his voice carrying none of the practiced smoothness that usually characterized his media appearances. "And I want to explain why. Because my silence has not been neutral. It has been complicit, and I cannot continue to pretend that what is happening in Gaza is too complicated for me to understand, or too political for me to address when children are dying and the world is watching. And most of us are choosing to look away, because it's easier than confronting the reality of what we're witnessing." The room fell completely silent, reporters recognizing that they were about to witness something unprecedented in the carefully managed world of celebrity media relations, where controversial topics were typically avoided through prepared statements and diplomatic non-answers that said nothing while appearing to address everything. But Ronaldo had clearly decided to abandon the script that his handlers had written for him in favor of speaking from a place of genuine conviction that made everyone present understand they were witnessing something rare and potentially career-defining. His publicist, sitting just outside the camera frame, was frantically making hand signals for him to stop, to return to safer topics like charitable football matches and foundation work that wouldn't generate controversy or alienate sponsors who preferred their brand ambassadors to remain politically neutral. But Ronaldo wasn't looking at his team anymore. His attention focused entirely on the journalists who had come expecting routine promotional content and were instead getting a masterclass in how to use fame responsibly when the world is watching atrocities unfold in real time. "I have been afraid," he continued, his admission shocking everyone in the room who had never heard him acknowledge fear about anything, let alone fear about speaking out on issues that mattered to him. Afraid of saying the wrong thing, afraid of being misunderstood, afraid of losing endorsements or facing criticism from people who want me to stick to football and stay out of politics. But my fear has kept me quiet while children have been killed, while hospitals have been bombed, while entire families have been erased from existence. And I realize now that my fear is a luxury that dying children don't have, that my comfort with silence is a privilege that comes from not having bombs falling on my home." The questions that followed came rapidly, reporters sensing that this unprecedented moment of honesty would generate headlines around the world, but also recognizing that they were witnessing something more significant than a news story. They were seeing a global icon grapple publicly with the moral weight of influence and the responsibility that comes with having millions of people listen to your words and follow your example, whether you want that responsibility or not. "Are you taking sides in a complex geopolitical conflict?" asked a journalist from a major American network. The question loaded with implications about neutrality and the expectation that celebrities should remain above political controversy. But Ronaldo's response revealed that he had thought deeply about this exact criticism and had reached conclusions that his management team would have preferred he keep to himself rather than sharing with a global audience that included fans, critics, and sponsors who might not appreciate his moral clarity. "I am taking the side of children who are being killed," he replied without hesitation, his voice growing stronger as he found his footing in territory that felt more honest than any promotional interview he had ever given. I am taking the side of families who are being bombed in their homes. I am taking the side of people who are trapped in an open-air prison where they cannot escape the violence that surrounds them. And if that makes me political, then I accept that label because remaining neutral when children are dying is not neutrality, it is complicity in their deaths. The follow-up questions came like machine gun fire, reporters trying to get him to walk back his statements or clarify his position in ways that would make his comments less inflammatory. But Ronaldo had clearly crossed a line from which he had no intention of retreating, his decision to speak out having been made not in the heat of the moment, but after weeks of internal struggle that had led him to conclude that silence was no longer an option for someone with his platform and reach. "But don't you think this conflict is too complex for simple moral judgments?" pressed another journalist, the question reflecting the common wisdom that complicated situations require nuanced responses that avoid taking clear positions on right and wrong. But Ronaldo's answer demonstrated that he had rejected this conventional thinking in favor of a moral clarity that cut through political complexity to focus on fundamental human rights and basic human decency. "There is nothing complex about dead children," he said, his voice carrying an edge that made everyone in the room pay closer attention. "There is nothing nuanced about bombing hospitals and schools. There is nothing complicated about watching people starve because they are not allowed to leave the place where they are being killed. And anyone who tries to make this complex is trying to avoid the simple moral reality that some things are wrong, regardless of the political context that surrounds them." A reporter from a European outlet asked about the potential consequences of his statements, about whether he was concerned that speaking out might affect his relationships with teammates, coaches, or sponsors who might disagree with his position. But Ronaldo's response revealed that he had already calculated these risks and decided that his conscience mattered more than his commercial interests, that some principles were worth defending even when defending them came with professional costs. "I have been privileged to play football at the highest level, to earn more money than I could spend in several lifetimes, to have influence that reaches billions of people around the world," he said, his tone becoming more personal as he spoke about the responsibilities that came with his success. "And if I cannot use that privilege to speak for people who are being killed, if I cannot risk some comfort to defend people who have no comfort left, then what is the point of having influence at all except to make myself richer while the world burns around me?" The room erupted in follow-up questions, but Ronaldo held up his hand to indicate he wasn't finished, that he had more to say before he would take additional questions about a topic that clearly meant more to him than any football match or endorsement deal ever could, his body language suggesting that this moment had been building for weeks, and that he was finally ready to say everything he had been holding back, out of caution and concern for his carefully managed public image. "I want to be clear about something," he continued, his voice taking on the tone of someone who had made peace with difficult decisions. "I am not here to provide political analysis or to propose solutions to problems that have existed for decades. I am here to say that when I see children being killed, when I see families being destroyed, when I see people being denied basic human rights, I cannot pretend that my platform comes with no responsibilities, that my influence should only be used to sell products and promote matches while people suffer and die." The questions that followed revealed the discomfort that many in the media felt with celebrities who stepped outside their expected roles, who used their platforms for moral positions rather than commercial purposes. But Ronaldo seemed to have anticipated this reaction and had prepared responses that demonstrated his commitment to speaking out, regardless of how uncomfortable it made people who preferred their entertainers to remain entertaining rather than challenging. "Some of you will write that I should stick to football," he said, looking directly at several reporters who had already been crafting critical headlines in their minds, "that I don't understand politics, that I am naive to think that simple moral statements can address complex problems. But I want you to understand something. I am not trying to solve the conflict in Gaza. I am trying to use my voice to say that killing children is wrong, that bombing hospitals is wrong, that trapping people in conditions where they cannot escape violence is wrong. And if that makes me naive, then I prefer naivety to the sophisticated silence that allows atrocities to continue while people debate the complexity of stopping them. A journalist from the Middle East asked about his personal connection to the issue, whether he had Palestinian friends or business interests that had influenced his decision to speak out. But Ronaldo's answer revealed that his motivation came from something more fundamental than personal relationships or financial considerations, that his conscience had been awakened by images and stories that had broken through the careful barriers he had built around his public persona. "My connection is human," he said simply. "I have seen the photographs of children killed in their beds. I have watched videos of fathers carrying their dead daughters. I have read the names of families who were wiped out in single airstrikes, and my connection to their suffering is the same connection that every person should feel when they witness injustice. The connection of shared humanity that makes their pain my pain, because we are all human beings who deserve to live without fear of being killed for existing in the wrong place at the wrong time." The press conference continued for another 30 minutes, with Ronaldo fielding questions about potential backlash, about whether other athletes should follow his example, about the role of sports figures in political discourse. But his answers consistently returned to the same theme, that influence comes with responsibility, that silence in the face of atrocity is a form of complicity, and that some moral positions are too important to abandon out of concern for commercial consequences or public criticism. When the final question was asked about whether he regretted speaking out, whether he wished he had remained silent and avoided the controversy that would certainly follow his statements, Ronaldo's answer provided a fitting conclusion to a press conference that had transformed from routine promotion to moral declaration, from celebrity media management to a lesson in how to use platform and privilege in service of human dignity rather than personal comfort. "I regret my silence more than I could ever regret my words," he said, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had wrestled with his conscience and emerged with clarity about his obligations to use his influence responsibly. "I regret every day that I remained quiet while children were being killed, every post I made about luxury cars and expensive watches while families were being bombed, every opportunity I had to speak for people who have no voice and chose instead to protect my own comfort and commercial interests. And if speaking out now costs me money or endorsements or the approval of people who think celebrities should stay silent about injustice, then those are costs I am willing to pay, because my conscience is worth more than any contract or relationship that requires me to ignore the suffering of innocent people." The aftermath of the press conference would dominate headlines for weeks, with some praising Ronaldo's courage and moral clarity, while others criticized him for overstepping his role as an athlete. But the man who walked out of that room was different from the one who had walked in. Transformed by his decision to prioritize human conscience over commercial consideration, to use his influence for something more meaningful than personal enrichment, to demonstrate that even the most carefully managed public figures can choose authenticity over safety when the stakes are high enough and the cause is important enough to risk everything they have built in service of something larger than themselves.